Hi there, and welcome to the YEG MS podcast. It's been 70 days or so since the last time I uploaded a podcast, and my apologies to anyone who listens regularly. But it's been a really eventful first few months of the year for me. I guess we're actually halfway into the year now. We're in June. But with the really long run 2016 going on just about a month ago, really crazy busy time. The bike tour, the Johnson MS bike from Leduc to Camrose, goes here in about 48 hours from when I'm recording this Saturday. And in between, I had a niece's wedding, a trip to a different province, a lot of stuff with my personal career, with my work that I had to attend to. And unfortunately, I just haven't had the time to dedicate to the blog or to the podcast that I'd like. However, I'm back, and with the bike tour coming up here, and like I said, in about 48 hours, it seemed like a good time to record one and sort of move this thing on. And looking forward to the bike tour. Well, I'm looking forward to the event and seeing everybody at the event on Saturday night at the Camrose exhibition grounds. We have a bigger team. The Battered Piles are a bigger team this year than we've ever been in the past, so that's exciting. The Battered Piles is the name of my MS bike team. As of yesterday, we had raised just over $30,000 in total, with the proceeds from the run going to the team, as well as the other members of the bike team raising money, which is phenomenal. Last I checked, we were 9th overall for team fundraising, and personally, I was number 3 overall. But I usually get dumped down. You'd probably get bumped down to 4 or 5, but I'm okay with that. I mean, the run itself has managed to raise about $37,000 in the last 2 years for the MS Society of Canada, and I couldn't be more thrilled. Updates on the run for anyone who's interested. It went really well this year. It took 2 hours. I was 2 hours faster covering the 80K this year. And a lot of that goes, my hat's off to Chris T of Blitz Conditioning. He was a phenomenal support for myself. He volunteered to train me, and the support was huge. And he also ran the whole distance with me. I think when we hit 50K, it was the longest run he'd ever done. It was great. And along with him, Andre Lassard, who's the community manager for Sport Check here in Edmonton, he ran the whole way. He was actually on the last podcast. He ran the Boston. Finished in under 3 hours at the Boston Marathon this year. Having a runner of that level and that experience, and especially the personality that Andre has, he just has a very wonderful energy to him, was phenomenal and a huge help. And also Jen Ferentz of the November Project, she ran the whole way as well. And having the three of them and having athletes of that level support me, give me tips. What can I say? You just can't ask for more. I jokingly say, but it may actually be true. As far as fat ultra marathoners with MS go, I'm probably in the top 5 in the world. Guaranteed top 10, but probably in the top 5. And I mean that jokingly, of course, but having 3 athletes like that with me that are just on a different level than I was a great help, and it was great. I don't have a guest on the podcast today. Not that I wasn't able to line anyone up. I didn't really try. This is just going to be me flying on my own. I have a lot of things that have been rambling through my head that I want to talk about, so I'll work through them in the next half hour or so, and I hope you find some value in it. What else do I want to talk about? On the note of the really long run, next year it is going to change. And really interestingly enough, out of all the stuff that's happened with the really long run, the coolest part, outside of raising money and awareness, but the absolute coolest part about that run that I never foresaw coming is I've met some absolutely phenomenal people. I just mentioned Chris, Andre, and Jen, who ran with me, but not just them. I met a gentleman named Kieran who ran about 20K last year. He ran another 20K this year, who owns a production company. And his name's Kieran, and he owns a company called Production 71. And you can find them on Twitter, Google them. And his production company creates multimedia for different businesses, training videos, educational videos. And he came to me before the run, about a week or two before the run, and he said, "Hey, Sean, what if we film the run and we create a promotional video to help you market the run for next year?" And I didn't know what to expect. And I said, "Sure, it sounds phenomenal, but and basically the theme that we went with, we decided that in order to grow, I've been thinking for a while now, in order to grow this event and grow the amount of money, grow the awareness, grow the participation, the really long run has to grow beyond me. It can't just be a one-guy event. It has to grow into something larger where there's more MS warriors involved, more people involved, more participation. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to change the run, and also going to have to position it differently. I think that the idea of running an ultra marathon along the highway, it's not the most attractive thing for people when they're considering things that they're thinking about doing. They don't go, "Hey, I'd love to run for 9 hours or 9.5, 10 hours along the side of an Alberta highway." It's just not something that says, "Hey, that's something I want to do," to most people. And I get that. So my thought is that I have to grow beyond that. So I was telling Kieran that's what I was thinking, and then they shot this, and I just saw the rough cut. He calls it a rough cut. Didn't look rough to me, but he showed me the rough cut. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words. The rough cut yesterday, and at a coffee shop in the West End, Edmonton, and I welled up. It was. I found it very powerful, and I didn't know what to say. I kept saying, "It's not that I don't like it. I'm actually speechless." And there are a few things that leave me at a loss for words, and it did. I just think that he captured it really well, and along with that theme of how we're going to transition this thing into a larger event that will hopefully attract more people to participate. So like I said, there's an example of a really cool person, Kieran and his team at Production 71. Phenomenal job, and words can't express my gratitude for what you guys created. I think it's amazing. Along those lines, of fantastic people that I met. About 4 months ago now, I got an email from a gentleman named Mark, and how he came into my airspace is that he's an MS nurse who happens to be an ultra marathoner, and he doesn't just run 80K type events, he runs 100-mile events, which make my little 80K run look like a lap around the block. Anyway, he'd approached the MS Society about doing some sort of MS run, and he would, happy to help support it, plan it, etc. And they said, "Hey, you haven't heard of Sean? Sean actually is already doing something like that. He runs from the cameras, blah, blah, blah. You should reach out to him." So he did, and I had the pleasure of meeting him in person, and his wonderful kids and his wonderful wife over some of the events previous to the run. And, he's volunteered to help me plan the next one, which is just, whenever somebody volunteers their time and approaches you and says, hey, I want to get involved. Can I do this for you? Can I do that? And there are people that you don't even really know that well. It really renews your faith in humanity, and it really makes you feel that regardless of the craziness going on in the world, whether it's politicians wanting to build walls or crazy fanatics or whatever, all the, down economy, all that kind of stuff. And then you stop and think, you know what? There's just good people out there, and they're everywhere, and they come from all walks of life. They come from every imaginable race, religion. There's just good people everywhere, and that's what doing this run and volunteering my time reaffirms. It's very empowering because it really just, again, reaffirms my faith that people are basically good. And so I look forward to working with Mark, and the idea that I have for next year is that rather than running from Leduc to Camrose, is moving the run into Edmonton and doing it in the Edmonton River Valley. For those of you who've never been to Edmonton or don't know very much about Edmonton, Edmonton's a city with a metro population of roughly 1 million people, give or take. And there's a phenomenal river valley that runs through the heart of the city. And there's more than enough paved and unpaved trails that we could create an ultra marathon route. But rather than it being a straight ultra marathon, my thought right now is that, and if there's anybody from the MS Society, listening, well, I haven't told you yet, but here it is. My thought is, instead of doing a straight ultra marathon, we get people to form teams, and it becomes a relay. And it's not a race, a race per se. And the relay can be, let's say we come up with a 60-kilometer course. You could have 60 people run a kilometer each, or you could have 2 people run 30 kilometers each. Your team can consist of one person. And it doesn't matter team to team how many team members there are. You just have to cover the distance. So like, for instance, me, I'm probably going to want to run the whole thing, where if you have people of different fitness levels, people with more severe MS that want to get involved, but doing even a 5K is too much, then they could run 500 meters for all. It's about covering the distance, it's about creating awareness, and it's about raising money. And I think that would be a more inclusive event. It's not as intimidating as running along the highway. No one needs to, and any team member of any team can run to their ability. If they're only good for a half kilometer, then they run a half kilometer. If you got somebody who with more severe MS that struggles walking and they want to walk the last 100 meters for their team, then that's what they do, and it becomes an event that's inclusive and that everybody can conceivably take part in. And then personally, what I want to do is get that really long, maybe we'll call it the really long relay, or I don't know, maybe whatever the branding is. And then personally, every second year, I'll do a really long run myself. And my initial thought right now is that in 2018, I want to run the Jasper to Banff Parkway in 2 days, which would basically be 2 really long runs over a weekend. So do a really long run, sleep in a tent, get up and do it again. Because that's basically the distance of the parkway. And putting that 2 years in the future gives me enough time to train, and it gives me enough time to prepare and plan and work with sponsors and all that other great stuff. And speaking of amazing people, I do have to give a plug. Adidas of Canada was pretty amazing. Wasn't pretty. They were amazing this year. And they stepped up and they sponsored me. They provided the team shirts. They provided me with training gear, shoes, pants, shorts, sweaters, you name it. They provided it. And, a huge shout out to Paul, who's the manager of the Adidas store in South Edmonton Common. Him and I have started running together. He's a great guy. Chelsea at the Adidas Head Office, fantastic. I mean, going from a very, very grassroots event, not even 2 years ago, to having the support of a big company like that. Again, it's just meeting cool people that want to help, and it was a phenomenal help. I mean, what can I say? I never thought in my wildest dreams that I'd have a shoe company sponsor me. So, and it still doesn't even feel that right, because I mean, I don't think anyone would see me walking in public and go, "Yeah, that guy looks like a sponsored athlete." So, again, hats off. And I shouldn't forget to mention all the support runners and all the people who volunteered the day of. It's just it's very humbling to have people support you in that way, and then and are willing to follow you around all day, because I can't imagine watching the run is at all entertaining. I mean, I just can't imagine. I can't imagine being my dad or my sister sitting in the support van all day. I can't imagine being my mom following it from stop to stop, and my Auntie Pat. The support runners who are waiting for us to come in, who are having to follow on social media, figuring out where we are, making sure that they're at their pickup spot on time. Just, unreal. So that's the really long run. That's the update on that. And last week I was in Kamloops. For those of you who aren't familiar with Canada, Kamloops is about an 8-hour drive from Edmonton. It's west of Edmonton. It's in the Rocky Mountains. And surprisingly enough, this may surprise people who aren't from Canada, or may even surprise people that are in Canada. Kamloops is actually situated in a semi-desert. There's actually sagebrush there. It gets very, very hot. And it's mountainy. Where I'm living right now, it's in the prairies, but it's mountainous in Kamloops. That's where I grew up. So while I was there, one of the big mistakes I made last year is, after the really long run, I didn't train for a few months. Partially because I couldn't. My recovery time this year was infinitely faster. I mean, I was ready to go for a run the next day this year, where last year I couldn't even get out of bed the next day. So the conditioning has obviously gotten better. But anyway, I was in Kamloops last week, and I'm trying to make sure that I stay on top of my training, and just so I don't lose as much as I did last year. And so I ran to one of the peaks around there, up to one of the radio towers that sits on one of the peaks up on the top of one of the mountains. And I had a couple hours to myself just to run around, and no pressure, nobody watching, nobody, just running with a fantastic view, and just going out for the pure enjoyment of it. And I was saying to people after the run this year that part of me just wants to run. Like, the fundraising's great and being interviewed and all that stuff, that's all part of it, but just the freedom of being able to run. And I am so fortunate as a man who lives with MS that I am still able to run. For any warriors out there that are listening that can't, my heart goes out to you, and I hope that in my own small way that I contribute to there being a cure. And interestingly enough, I ran the second 20K on the really long run with my neurologist, and he sounded pretty confident that there's going to be some pretty substantial leap forwards in treatment over the next few years. And I sincerely hope he's right. I mean, whether it's the stem cell or whatever it is, I don't think any of us really actually care what the treatment is that leads to an improvement in the quality of life, or even a cure. But here's hoping that, as long as we keep working at it, and and keep creating awareness that it moves on. Now, kind of switching gears. Yeah, kind of switching gears. One of the things that has come up is, and one of the things that really, it pisses me off. You know, when I talk to people, obviously exercise and being active comes up because of the nature of what I've been doing over the last couple of years with the run. And one of the responses that I commonly get is, "Oh, I'm not a runner. Oh, that's not for me." And I'm not talking about I'm not talking about people with MS that say that. I'm talking about people that haven't been diagnosed with anything that say that. And to be honest with you, the reason why it irritates me, because that is the biggest crock of horse. I can't say that. It's the biggest crock of horse poop I've ever heard. If you're not healthy, it's because you don't want, like, if you don't have a diagnosis like MS, or a pre-existing condition, and you choose to live a lifestyle that creates poor health, whether it's whether it's overweight or you're smoking or whatever it is that you are doing or aren't doing, don't say to somebody, "Well, it's just because I'm not a runner." Underneath our skin, we're fundamentally all the same. And the truth is, we are built for endurance. There are still modern hunter-gatherer tribes in Africa that how they hunt is through endurance. They will simply chase an animal until the animal is exhausted, and then they get it. That's a fact. It's the reason why we store fat. We're not built to overpower. We're basically designed to think and endurance. We are born to run. And you can listen to all kinds of, again, horse crap about different exercise programs and this and that and the other thing. I am still, to this day, even though I'm an ultramarathoner, and I can say that because I've done two, I'm still over 200 pounds. I'm not built like a gazelle, and I've had bad knees my whole life. My knees have not gotten any worse as a result of running. In fact, my knees feel better right now than they have in literally years. They don't pop out like they used to. Part of that's stretching, rolling out, exercise, moving, drinking enough water. I mean, all of these things are factors that go into it. But to suggest that you can't exercise because somehow you're that much different than everyone else, that's a great excuse, but that's what it is, and it's an excuse. If you want to get more active, you can be more active. That's what I think. And that's not what I think, it's what I know. Now, if you are a MSer with limited mobility, you can still move around. And it's all about challenging yourself and breaking it down into bite-sized pieces. So maybe you can't run around the block. That's fine. I couldn't run around the block when I started either. I couldn't see out of one of my eyes when I started. I had no balance when I started. My mom used to have to walk me down the street and hold my arm because my balance was so bad. That was 9 years ago. I've now run 3 half marathons and 2 ultra marathons since. And it was all by breaking it down into bite-sized pieces. And it literally started with just getting up and going out to the end of the driveway and back. And then when I would go on my walks, I had a loop that I did. And once I was able to walk on my own, On the paths I walked on, there was pedestrian bridges over this creek where I lived, and they were about 400 to 500 meters apart. I used to challenge myself to see if I could run. And it sounds funny now because I just ran 80 kilometers in a single day. But I honestly started with just trying to run 400 meters without stopping. And I was so badly out of shape at the time and still recovering from a really severe MS attack that 400 meters seemed impossible. And I can remember my lungs feeling like they wanted to explode. I was still, there was, because I had been smoking and making very, very unhealthy lifestyle choices. But eventually I could run the 400 meters. And once I got to 400 meters, I thought, let's see if I can do a whole loop, which is maybe just under a kilometer. And then once I could run a kilometer without stopping, I thought, maybe I should train to see if I can run a 5K. Then I got to the point where I could run 5 kilometers without stopping. Then 5 became 10. Once I could run 10, I thought, hey, I should try a half marathon. Then in 2009, I ran my first half marathon. Ran it in 2 hours, which apparently is not a bad time. It's not. I mean, I'm not competing in the world championships of 2 hours, believe me. But not a bad time. And here we are now. And honestly, I believe this with every fiber of my being. It's not that you can't do it, it's that you don't want to do it. If you want to do something, you can do it. If you honestly believe and want to do it, you can do it. It's a choice. And by making that choice and by believing in it, you will start doing activities and taking actions that will guide you towards the goal. So if you have severe MS, again, maybe you'll never be able to run. And my heart goes out to you. But maybe it's just a matter of being able to move a little bit more. Maybe you have to exercise in a chair. But getting active will elevate your mood. And I believe, now this is a belief, I can't prove this, it'll help to lessen the severity of any future attacks and possibly improve your quality of life. And really that's all we can ask for. And why I brought that up is not because I've never actually had an MSer. I've never actually had a warrior tell me that they can't be more active. In fact, it's the opposite. The people that say they can't be active are actually my people in my life that don't have any pre-existing conditions. They're fat because they want to be fat. And they'll say, well, I don't really want to be fat. Sure you do. You maybe not consciously want to be fat, but you're not taking the actions. You haven't decided to take the actions. You haven't decided to do the necessary things to not be. Well, I'm genetically predisposed to carry weight myself, which is obvious. I accept who I am. I accept the limitations of who I am. But I also care for myself, and I want to be as healthy as I can be, not only for myself, for my wife, for my kids. So I really got on a high horse here, and I don't know how, so I apologize, but there's the Canadian in me right there. I just said sorry. I don't think I should have apologized for that little rant. I think that I'm speaking from the heart, and if you want to be more active, be more active. And understand you can be more active. The only thing that's holding you back is you. It's not your disease. It's not your genetics. It's not anything else other than you need to make the choice and just get your ass out there and do it. Am I allowed to say that? We'll leave it. See if I get in trouble from Apple. Yeah. So this one's going to be a little shorter than normal. Probably just over a half an hour here. I just wanted to get something out before the bike tour, which I'm really looking forward to. We're supposed to get rained on all weekend. I think this is my fifth oh no, this is my 6th bike tour. And I don't think in any of them I've ever had nice weather on both days. So it'll be a good time in Camrose Saturday night, and might be a little soggy, but we'll have fun, I think. But I'm renting a road bike this year. Everybody keeps telling me. I've been riding my mountain bike. This will be the first time I've ever done the bike tour on a road bike. And if it's not easier, I'll have some words to say to some people that, harped on me so I rented a road bike. We'll see. And I'm also going to get apparently you can get this, I'm going to call it nut butter. I don't know what else to call it. Apparently it's something you put on your area down there and it apparently makes the pain you get from riding a bike lessen. So if that's true, I'm gonna be covered in that stuff, because that's the worst part of it is sitting on a bike seat. And I'm going to be in for it this year, because I actually haven't been on a bicycle since I rode the bike tour last year. With all the running I've been doing, I just haven't ridden a bike. Now, the funny thing about that, the captain of our bike team is a gentleman named Paul. And every time I see him, he says, "Oh, are you sure because for those of you who aren't familiar with the bike tour, you ride 80 kilometers. So, the really long run is actually the day one route of the bike tour. So you do 80 kilometers to Camrose from Leduc, sleep overnight in Kamloops, get on your bike, and you ride back. So it's, it's 80 times 2, so 160. It's either 160 or 170 the whole weekend, because I think the day 2 route's a little bit longer. And every time I see him, he says, "Oh, Sean, you think you're going to be able to do the bike tour?" And the last time I looked at him and I said, "Look, Paul, I just ran the thing. I think I'll be fine." And I stand by that. I mean, I think if you can run it, you can't coast when you're running. You can coast on a bike. So I just think it's why he keeps asking me, are you sure you're going to be able to ride this thing? Well, the worst part is it's going to be my bum, because sitting on a bike seat is my least favorite thing. One of my least favorite things to do. So anyway, I will have another podcast relatively soon after the bike tour. I'm hoping to have a guest. Fantastic! I got an email from a listener almost a month ago, and a tough story. He was a very, very competitive athlete when he got diagnosed, and I don't know the whole story yet, but I did reach out to him and asked him if he would be on the podcast. So hopefully he'll be the next one, and kind of how he's transitioning and and how he's feeling now. I think being diagnosed is, well, obviously it's terrible for everyone. But if you're a high-level athlete and having a transition to, that's pretty heavy. So hopefully we'll get him on and we'll share that story with the rest of you. So on that note, if anyone out there would like to be a guest on the podcast, all you have to do is send me an email to Sean at ownmultiplesclerosis.com. So it's SEAN at OWN multiplesclerosis.com. It's all one word. You can also tweet at me at ownms.com1. So OWNMSDOTCOM and then the number 1. You can find me on Facebook. You can find All Multiple Sclerosis on Facebook. You can find The Really Long Run on Facebook. You can find me personally on Facebook at Sean. My name is Sean Wingrave. And last name is, I'll spell the whole thing. SEAN is my first name. And Wingrave, WING, G is in George, RAVE, V is in Victor. You can find me on Facebook. Add me as a friend. Anyone who gives me a friend request, I add. if you put, but if I end up with a bunch of goofy stuff through my news feed about politics or religion or something, I'll just unfriend you. And yeah, add me. So if there's anyone out there that wants to be a guest, by all means, get a hold of me. I'd love to hear from you. And the big thing is, if you want to be a guest and you don't always agree with things I have to say, that's great. I'd rather have differing points of view, because I know I'm not always right. Just ask my wife, I'm wrong more than I'm right. So anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.